Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I thought I would sit down and do a coffee chat for you guys. Get some black coffee in there, that's how I start my morning. All right, let's talk a little bit about carbohydrate and the hormonal benefits. Because this is something that doesn't get addressed enough. You know, everyone wants to talk about hormones. They want to talk about hormones and the effect on fat loss, hormones and the effect on muscle gain, fat gain, all these different things. But they throw these words out, but then they are ignorant regarding the actual hormonal responses. In fact, a lot of the people who, if they really and truly believed in a lot of these hormone hypotheses, they would be pro very high carbohydrate. Okay? And there's a few reasons for that. When we start looking at, particularly for muscle growth, but here's the thing, could we carry the muscle growth over to fat loss? Yeah, it is easier to get leaner when you have more muscle tissue. Okay, hopefully most people realize that. You burn more energy. You have higher insulin sensitivity, all these things. All right. So when we talk about there are hormonal benefits to our body composition from consuming carbohydrates, this is stuff that we need to think about. Now, number one, I think one that most people realize if they have read a little bit, right? But a lot of people don't. Everyone talks about the role of cortisol. Yes, we get a large cortisol response. Stress is a big deal. We get a large cortisol response from training, and that immediate cortisol does seem to at least be heavily correlated with more muscle growth. But we know that chronically elevated cortisol breaks down muscle tissue. This is one of the problems even when we are losing body weight, when we're working on losing body fat. Cortisol tends to go up. Okay. Conversely, that can contribute to muscle loss if we're not careful. Right? The elevated stress hormones can contribute to muscle protein breakdown hormonally. Now, when people start saying, well, don't you need some muscles to break down? Well, no, that's an outdated hypothesis for one. Number two, when it's calorie reduction induced, I can assure you it's not causing you to gain muscle. Okay? We don't gain more muscle because we start losing weight. That's not actually directly beneficial. In fact, it's the opposite. And one of the pathways through which that occurs is through elevating cortisol. All right. And you hear that all the time. People will point that out. Oh, yeah, we don't want too much cortisol. Well, what in terms of food intake, out of the different things we can eat, reduces cortisol the most? Carbohydrates. Enormous amounts of data displaying this. This is extremely well known in fitness circles and nutrition circles. Increasing your dietary carbohydrate can reduce cortisol. Okay, see where we're going with this? So if we're reducing cortisol, we are sparing muscle proteins. All right, so right off the bat, increasing carbohydrate intake blunts cortisol. Okay, well that's a good start. That's a good start, but it's only the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? All right, insulin IGF-1. Anyone who is trying to demonize insulin doesn't understand insulin. Insulin is extremely anabolic to muscle tissue. Okay? There's a reason that's why bodybuilders started getting so much bigger in the late 90s compared to previously. Okay? This is understood in those circles, by the way. This is heavily talked about. Did anyone think that they started using more androgens? No. The guys in the 80s were using large amounts. They were, many of them were reportedly at that 2 gram plus mark a week. It was the introduction of insulin that started putting another 20 pounds of muscle on these guys. Okay, insulin. Notice they are not even fat, so it's not causing fat gain. And that's the thing. Eating really insulinogenic foods in the absence of insulin resistance is not correlated at all with body fat gain. Why? Because insulin, particularly for trained muscles, yes, there can be a high insulin sensitivity in fat tissue that can stop it from releasing Okay, we need to be clear that can stop it from releasing fatty acids. Insulin is not directly contributing significantly to body fat gain. Okay, because carbohydrates are not stored in human subcutaneous tissue. In humans, it's a small amount can contribute to your visceral fat around your organs. It doesn't go under your skin. So, and then this has been confirmed in many studies in the metabolic world, even using carbon isotope testing. But it can obviously blunt liberation of fatty acids from your fat cells. So that's usually the concern, right? Hopefully no one thinks it's making you store more fat. But it can inhibit fat burning to some extent, absolutely. But when you have a lot of muscle tissue and your muscle tissue is trained, it's the opposite. The insulin sensitivity towards your muscle tissue is much greater. It biases, and in other words, anytime you elevate insulin in that environment, it biases the nutrient partitioning towards your muscles. It feeds the muscles. So this is a good thing. Same thing, the elevated insulin then elevates IGF-1, which is the primary set of hormones that are associated with building the structures of the proteins inside your muscle tissue. Okay, this is a good thing. All right, how about thyroid output? As carbohydrate goes down, your thyroid tends to slow down. As carbohydrate goes up, thyroid output increases, both an increase of T4 production and then conversion of T4 to T3. All right, this kicks your metabolic rate up. So in other words, higher carbohydrates will directly hormonally increase your metabolism through thyroid output. Again, well understood. This is one of the problems you will notice when people's metabolism slows. It's usually due to too low of carbohydrate in their diet. When they're dieting, it will stay higher if they keep the carbs higher. It's also one of the reasons why guys bulking stop gaining weight so quickly sometimes and keep having to add and add more if they're eating lots of carbohydrates, which is a good thing. Obviously, you're getting all these other anabolic benefits to go with that. So obviously, it would be better to be able to eat much more carbohydrate at the same rate of weight gain. All right, so that metabolic machinery there, that's a big deal. And then lastly, which doesn't get addressed enough, free testosterone. You know, again, everyone wants to discuss testosterone. Like it's such a big deal that what we do with our lives should increase our testosterone. But then they don't want to discuss carb loading. And there's a biological reason for that. Evolutionary biologists have already figured out why high carbohydrates increase free testosterone. Not just the mechanism, but why we have developed that. Okay, what happens is that it lowers SHBG because there's only two ways to increase your testosterone. You either have to have more free testosterone. That's the active testosterone. The other is inhibited and inactive because SHBG binds to most of your testosterone. It only leaves you a little chunk of it free. You can either increase the total amount of testosterone, and that will bring it up, or you can lower the SHBG. Insulin itself lowers SHBG. So again, insulinogenic response from your food increases free testosterone. Now, why would we have developed that? Could it be that during times of plenty, when we had excess calories, that's when nature wanted our sex drives going up? So that we were more likely to procreate during periods of plenty in which we had access to a lot of food, and therefore the survivability of the growing baby is higher, right? Because then the whole tribe and the whole community had more food. So it absolutely seems to be correlated as a survival mechanism. In other words, carbohydrate intake goes up, sex drives are going up due to the hormonal change, people are making more babies. Higher survivability rate, because it takes a lot of resources for a human to grow and raise a child. Okay? And it's 9 months in the womb that a lot of food's needed there. So that's the reason for it. But we come back over to all those points. There's a lot of hormonal reasons to consume more carbohydrate. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.